Hi, Cassandra.
Good evening, guys.
Guys, how's everyone doing?
Good.
Oh, okay. So Richard's joined. He just said in the chat he's here, but we can't see him.
So he's going to the page. Promote the
I'm not sure if he wants to. Is he considered a panelist or?
He's one of the police being honored.
Oh, good.
No, Richard Lujan. He's one of our council members.
Oh, okay. That's right. All right.
Yeah.
Well, if he's not intending on speaking, that's fine.
It says no video or audio. I can see you, but can't broadcast. So I'm not sure. Sounds like he's having some technical issues. So.
Okay.
So Kelly, have you heard anything from the city, the community centers opening up?
The community centers are supposed to open up in August. They don't know exactly when. And we are supposed to get back to live meetings in August also. I'm thinking probably September, but that is the latest. They're going back to the CPOA and city council meetings being live. I've got to talk to a couple of people with the city about doing hybrid meetings. So that's our latest thing here.
Okay. So CPOA and city council, but they have a regular, they do that at the Civic Plaza. So are you looking for venues for us to meet until the community centers open? Or is your plan just wait until they open and then?
No, we'll just wait till the community centers open. That should be in August, they say. So.
Okay. So depending on the date, it may be we could do it in August. If not, probably September then.
Yeah.
Depends on the date that they actually open.
Yeah, we should probably just plan on the first meeting in September going forward from there, I think. But.
Okay. Okay. So you heard it here first here, folks. September is the date for in-person meetings on North Domingo Baca. Will you be coordinating that for all of the CPCs?
Mm-hmm.
Scheduling those meetings for us?
Yeah, we should have our normal
schedule.
Yeah. Yeah, I already.
Because typically we had to.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say typically we had to schedule.
Yeah, no, I've been in contact with people already. They say, as soon as we're ready to open up to the public, we'll let you know. So.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Well, welcome everyone for joining us this evening. In case you're just joining us, we were talking about in-person meetings again. There are a lot of people that have emailed me that are anxious to get back to that in-person format. Not only members of the community, but council members are also interested in getting back to that. So September is the tentative date right now that we have scheduled for that. So, okay, so the first thing that I'd like to do is for those who are new to the meetings, just give you a quick rundown of community policing councils, and I'm going to read our purpose statement. And it says that we work inclusively and collaboratively with Albuquerque Police Department, community leaders, business owners, and community members to develop a constitutional community policing approach that identifies and implements strategies for reducing crime, addressing public safety issues, and fostering trust between APD and all community members. And we do this through regular public meetings, programs, and the recommendation process. We provide opportunities for communication between community members and the police department where collaboration and cooperation can build consensus toward establishing and maintaining an effective community policing structure. So that is who we are. That is what we have been tasked to do through our own definition and through the CASA. So the next thing on the agenda is something a little new that the board would like to add to the agenda. As you all know, or maybe not know, APD puts out a newsletter, a quarterly newsletter. The Northeast Area Command, Commander Weber and Francesca Purdue put together a newsletter. And in that newsletter, they have listed officers of the month for the Northeast Area Command. And so what I wanted to do tonight, I see Sergeant Rody has just joined us, and he is one of the ones that we are going to recognize and introduce this evening. So I just wanted to read the nomination for both of the officers. So Sergeant Rody. Sergeant Rody was nominated by his own officers as well as his chain of command for Officer of the Month for May. Sergeant Rody supervises one of the weekend swing shift teams, a team that works during what is consistently the busiest and most resource-intensive times during the week. Despite severe staffing shortages, Sergeant Rody always has a smile on his face and a can-do attitude. He works additional shifts and stays late without so much as a hint of complaining. He's always on top of his administrative tasks, even when overwhelmed with critical incident duties. Sergeant Rody exemplifies do as I do leadership, and we are proud to recognize him as an Officer of the Month. And so, Sergeant Rody, we just wanted to thank you for your commitment to serve and protect our community, and stay safe and be well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Well, we appreciate you.
You're welcome.
The second is Officer Ashley Freeland. She was nominated by Sergeant Doug Moore. Sergeant Moore speaks highly of Officer Freeland's work ethic, positive attitude, and strong leadership skills. Sergeant Moore said that Officer Freeland is often taking advantage of free training found outside the department, and she is often encouraging her peers to join her. She is often the first officer to take a call on shift and often the last officer to leave home at the end of shift, to leave for home at the end of her shift. She also bakes and cooks food to share with her team members on the watch. She is truly an exemplary officer and is highly motivated to help the citizens of Albuquerque. And she did send me an email saying that she was not going to be able to attend, but we just wanted to also recognize her and thank her for her commitment to serve and protect our community. And so, Officer Freeland, we wanted to say to you, stay safe and be well. Okay, so now what we'll do next on the agenda is introduction of the council. So I'll just go through my screen tiles here, and we'll start with Roy.
I'm Roy Turpin. I'm the vice chair. I've been a member since December, so I'm a relative newbie. I am a retired city employee. I worked for the city of Albuquerque for 25 years, and 22 of those years I worked for APD. So, and I've been interested in community policing from its inception here in Albuquerque, and I'm happy that we have a lot of people here tonight. So welcome everybody.
Thanks, Roy. Francine.
Hey everyone, it's good to be here tonight. My name is Francine Lopez. I'm currently a student at the University of New Mexico studying sociology and communication, and I have been a part of the Northeast Community Policing Council for 7 months.
Okay, thanks, Francine. Willie? Oh, you're a little frozen and on mute.
There we go. I'm sorry. I will try again. I am a semi-retired geriatrician and have been on the board since about February, and am I'm committed to making sure the Albuquerque Police Department works well with the community, and I have been interested in community policing for a significant period of time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Willie. Rena?
My name is Dina Soto. I've been on the board for a couple of years, and I am committed to helping our community be a better place to live and support APD and us be able to work together as a team. So I'm glad to be on the board, and thank you all for joining us.
Okay, thanks, Dina. Cassandra?
Cassandra Morrison, retired out from the Albuquerque Police Department as a Field Service Bureau Sergeant. Currently been on the board for, I don't know, over 3 years at this point, going on my 4th year. Committed to making an Albuquerque a safer place for the community.
Okay, thanks, Cassandra. Rick?
So I'm Rick Lujan. I'm working at Sandia Labs. I've been there for a total of 20 years. And I'm here to try to make Albuquerque a much safer place and to bring the community in line with APD and APD in line with the community to understand that we're both in this together.
Okay, thanks, Rick. All right, so we're going to take care of a little bit of business, and then our guest speaker will be joining us probably in a few minutes. I told him probably about 6:45. So let's go ahead and do the approval, and if there are any amendments to the July agenda.
I move that
Anything
we accept them.
So I had one amendment for the agenda. Kelly has asked that we add a section to the APD presentation, and that would be a status update on recommendations that have been submitted. So we'll add that as APD's part of the presentation. And just so kind of Kelly knows, typically what we do is we just put APD presentation on the agenda, and then we list items that we would like to get feedback on or information on. And it's kind of up to APD to provide that information. Maybe they may not have anything for recruiting that month, or something, but we just give them time and they can tell us what they would like to tell us based on items in their portion of the.
So I make a movement to accept them as amended.
I second.
Okay. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Amend and approval of the June meeting minutes. I'm hoping that everyone had a chance to read the minutes. Any changes to the minutes? We did have one change that I think Willie was not listed on the attendee list for June. And so Martisa and I have worked that out, and she has sent in the updated amended minutes for that to include Willie.
Thank you.
So based on that conversation, we can say that approve the minutes based on that conversation. And Marissa.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Minutes approved. So we have two members that we didn't get that haven't been introduced, And so Kenneth and Troy, could you, starting with Kenneth, just introduce yourself in a quick intro?
Yes, I'm Kenneth Armijo. I'm a scientist and engineer at Sandia National Laboratories, originally from Sabinal, New Mexico, but have lived in Albuquerque for quite a while here in the Northeast. I have joined the I've been on the CPC almost a year now, and have enjoyed a lot of the dialogue we've had between the community with APD, and it feels like it's a very good opportunity for us to really bolster and progress our city in a very communicative way. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kenneth. Troy?
Hello, everyone. I'm Troy Taylor. I've been on the board for 5 years, live here in Albuquerque for 10. Family man, got 4 kids, so it's an active time. But on the board because wanted to have a voice in helping to see things change. I've lived in numerous different places, grew up in El Paso. Albuquerque's been my second home for years. But no matter where I've been from the East Coast to the West, each city has similar issues. Just we have it on a bigger scale out here. So it's definitely a good place to be able to voice opinions, hopefully bring and build the gap between APD and the community. And just individuals that want to see change for the better for the city. This is a place where, like I said, I've got 4 kids, so it's home. Don't plan on going anywhere, so I would definitely want to see it improve. And all of us on the board, I think we're doing a really good job at being able to help implement change and productive procedures and recommendations. So we're here to hear your voice. If there's something that you have concerns about, that you want us to know, please feel free and don't hesitate to share it with us. You can email us, you can talk to us. We want to hear from you on how you would like to see the city better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Troy. All right, so our guest speaker this evening has joined us, and his name is Mr. Pete Dinelli. Pete was born and raised in Albuquerque and has a 40-year history of community involvement and service, and as an elected and appointed official, and as a practicing attorney in Albuquerque. So he is going to talk a little bit about, he has his own blog that he keeps everyone up to date on what is happening with the city. And so we thought it would be good to have him talk about some of the issues that he sees with community safety, with APD, some ideas on how CPCs could help, how we could be more engaged. And I'm just asking if he would prefer to have questions asked at the end. We have someone that's going to be monitoring the questions. And so, Pete, if you would prefer questions answered at the end or during your presentation, that's totally your preference. So I would say we probably have about 30 to 45 minutes, 30 minutes for presentation, and then we usually allow about 15 minutes or so for questions, Q&A. So the floor is yours. Welcome.
You need to unmute, Pete.
Unmute.
Nope.
How's that?
That's better.
Okay. This is about the third Zoom meeting that I've made a presentation to. I did one before the Rotary Club recently, and also the Albuquerque Kiwanis Club. And you made a reference to my blog. Before I get into that, is my I don't see. Oh, there she is, Dina. I didn't. I wanted to say hello to my my niece, Dina Soto. I love her dearly. I really did not know exactly what direction you really wanted to talk about. There's 3 major topics that the The first topic that I think Dina raised was discussion of the mayor's race. And frankly, I really don't think it'd be appropriate for me to talk about that because I'm very biased when it comes to the mayor's race. But the reality of it is I don't like either one of the guys that are running. So I think that pretty well lays to rest any feelings that I may have and let you decide who you feel should be our next mayor. But there are two major issues that I think that really dovetail into each other. And that is the DOJ consent decree and what is happening. How did we get where we are today? And where should we be going with this forward? I think that is extremely critical. One of the things that I'd like to talk about is that we often forget that why the DOJ arrived here in the first place. And this is something that we need to really remember what happened. It was in 2014 that the Department of Justice had completed an investigation of the city of Albuquerque's Albuquerque Police Department, and they found a very consistent pattern of excessive use of force and deadly force. And to the point where they pronounced that Albuquerque Police Department was suffering from a culture of aggression that had taken years to develop. And consequently, the Department of Justice made it very clear that if the city did not enter into some sort of a settlement agreement, they were going to go ahead and file a lawsuit and take over the Albuquerque Police Department, and we would lose complete control. The net result was a court-approved settlement agreement. And one of the things that a lot of people seem to forget is that there are roughly 17 of these consent decrees throughout the United States. 17. And but Albuquerque's consent decree is different from all of them. What is consistent with all the other consent decrees is that the excessive use of force and deadly force related to a pattern of conduct as it applied to minorities, racial profiling. For example, when you look at New Orleans, there was racial profiling involving African Americans and prostitutes. Up in Seattle, where they also have a consent decree, there was an issue involving Hispanics and racial profiling. In Los Angeles, the same thing, came to racial profiling. All this was very consistent throughout all of these consent decrees. Albuquerque was very unique, though. Does anybody want to take a guess what the main difference is between our consent decree and all the others? The answer to that is mental illness. The Albuquerque Police Department was found to engage in conduct that was so egregious when they were interacting with the mentally ill. The best example I can give is the case of James Boyd, the homeless camper that was shot in the Sandia Mountains, that is the foothills. And what had happened is the DOJ had discovered, they had looked at all the uses of force over a period of 4 years. And they found that there was a definite pattern of conduct as it related to the way the Albuquerque Police Department was interacting with the mentally ill. And there was a real change that occurred with the Albuquerque Police Department. What was the real history involving the police department? And I actually was a witness to it because in 2005, I was working for the city as a deputy city attorney, and I oversaw what was referred to as the Safe City Strike Force. In 2005, I am absolutely convinced that an event occurred that changed law enforcement in Albuquerque for many years, for decades. And there were two events, one involving the Albuquerque Police Department, and the second one involving a Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office. In 2005, there was a gentleman by the name of John Hyde. And Hyde was severely mentally ill. He had been off his meds. And what had happened is that his family had APD dispatched to pick him up. That apparently he was having a severe psychotic episode. Two police officers showed up to his place. They were not advised of the severe mental illness this gentleman was undertaking. And what happened is that they were not aware that Mr. Hyde had gone on a shooting spree. He killed 3 other individuals in the community. One a very young man of 17, another one in his, I believe, is in his 50s. Still a third person, all at separate locations. And he had gone home. And these 2 police officers were experienced police officers. They both had already retired, and they had gone back. And what happened is they knocked on the door. You showed up, and what happened was that this individual came out and said, I'll go with you willingly. Give me a second. I need to go back in and get dressed. He came out and he shot them both, point blank, with a rifle. This had such a major impact. I recall what happened because we were in the process of hiring a new police chief, and Ray Schultz was brought back. And what I saw in 2005 was a situation where the Albuquerque Police Department, there was a deliberate change in approaching to policing in Albuquerque. And I recall very vividly Chief Schultz saying, "This will never happen under my watch ever again." And that point on, what happened, there was a concentration where the law enforcement changed its attitude. That is, law enforcement in Albuquerque. It changed its position from community-based policing to the #1 priority being making sure that the officers got back home and back home alive. In other words, it was officer protection and officer safety that became #1. Just a few months later, what happened was there was a BCSO sheriff's officer, McGrain was his name, and it was a traffic stop, and the individual pulled his gun on the officer and shot him point blank in the face. And as a result, the McGrain Institute was created as a result of that. But from 2005, the Albuquerque Police Department went through an extreme, I really believe there was a major shift in approach in training, an approach in as far as increasing funding. And by 2009, the Albuquerque Police Department, I can say without any doubt, was the best trained, best equipped, best, the highest number of personnel in its history. We had 1,100 police officers. And what happened in 2009 is that it was also the financing of that department was the highest it had ever been. But what happened is that over a period of those years, from 2009 until 4 years, the department began to slowly slide. And it took a full 8 years before it hit rock bottom. And when I say that, I'm not talking about, what I'm talking about is training. What I'm talking about is funding. The department went from 1,100 sworn police officers, and it dived to almost 850. Some would say it went even as low as 600. But the number that I recall is about 650. And there was a mass exodus. We're talking about officers that said, "I've had enough. We're under enough strain as it is." And all that was associated with the Department of Justice reforms. Because what happened was in 2014 is when there was the finding. So from 2009 until 2014, you had this change in approach to law enforcement. And again, these are my own personal opinions. This is what I viewed and saw. But we shifted from community-based policing to making sure that the officers were better trained for self-protection. And there was also an emphasis placed on recruiting. And some would argue that there was a militarization of the Albuquerque Police Department at the time, or that period of time. And the culmination of all this was the DOJ. And the DOJ consent decree was negotiated in 2014. It was done so over almost a full year. And in that consent decree, the city of Albuquerque agreed to institute 271 reforms. 271 reforms. And in those reforms, it was mandated that all sorts of changes were to occur, especially with the training. There were certain types of policy that were thrown out that were no longer to be allowed. That included no chokeholds. That included no firing at vehicles. That included certain types of restraints. And what also was mandated was training, because keep in mind, Albuquerque's consent decree centered around how the APD was dealing with the mentally ill. And there were a number of cases that also incurred mentally ill that resulted in large judgments to the city of Albuquerque. And some of those, for example, the James Boyd case cost the city $5 million in settlement. In addition to that, 2 police officers were charged with murder. Although the jury hung and the charges were dismissed, the fact is that there were still repercussions when it came to the city. In addition to that, you had a case involving a mentally ill a gentleman that was 26 years of age, suffering from severe post-traumatic stress disorder. He had been stopped by the Albuquerque Police Department and went into a psychotic episode. He held a gun to his head, threatened to kill himself. And while he was on the cell phone, the lieutenant at the time gave authorization for to use deadly force. And there was an insufficient amount of de-escalation tactics that occurred. That case resulted in a $4.5 million settlement against the city. I can go on and on with a number of the cases involving the mental ill. There's another one by the name of Torres. He was suffering from severe psychosis, and he had an arrest warrant that undercover officers decided they wanted to execute. They went in, and he had no idea that there were police officers, at least in his own mind. I think that the argument would be made is that the officers identified themselves, but they were dressed in undercover apparel. The net result is that he was also shot, and that also resulted in a $5 million judgment against the city. The point is that the consent decree came rolling around, and all these agreements were made regarding what the city needed to do to get the APD on track. And again, when it was negotiated and finally implemented, APD had declined in personnel dramatically, and a lot of it had to do with police oversight by the DOJ. But the sweeping changes were dramatic. For example, like I said before, there was the banning of chokeholds. There was mandatory auditing of usage of tasers. There was a rewriting of the deadly force and use of force and deadly force policies. That took at least 1 year to rewrite the use of force policies. Also, the CASA mandated constitutional policing practices, as well as mandatory intervention relating to dealing with the mentally ill. There were stricter training procedures that were implemented. And as a result of all this, there was also the mandatory creation of the Police Oversight Board. And in addition to the Police Oversight Board, the CASA mandated the creation of the Police Civilian Advisory Councils. And that's where you people come into play. it's considered a very critical part of the CASA. They also removed a lot of blocks as far as being able to file obstacles, is what I'm trying to say. Removed obstacles in filing civil complaints, or that is civilian oversight complaints to the agency. Again, there was also the way agreements were entered into as to how officers would be able to use their firearms. To me, the most critical part of all this, and the most difficult part, is the compliance provisions of this. The CASA mandates that a federal monitor is to come in, and he compiles statistics. And there are 3 compliance levels that are dealt with. And the way it was originally written is that the CASA was going to be dismissed in 4 years. They were going to try to implement it in 4 years. We were assured repeatedly that that was doable. And it turns out the 4 years has come and gone. We're averaging roughly $20 million a year in implementation, training, and the bottom line is that we're still struggling to implement it. The first 4 years were strongly resisted by the then chief of police, even though that chief of police agreed to it and entered into it. And also the mayor did. And that was Mayor Barry and Chief of Police Gordon Eden. And the compliance levels have never really been that impressive, at least not until Mayor Keller was elected. And there was a strong commitment by him and his chief of police at the time that they would implement the reforms. Well, that turned out to be wishful thinking, because once again, there was this internal resistance to the changes being mandated. And there was also resistance to a lot of the reforms by the union. And as a result, the 3 compliance levels, for us to be able to get out of the CASA, we have to basically come into compliance in 3 areas: primary compliance, secondary compliance, and policy. And we've only achieved 100% compliance in one of those areas. We've dropped dramatically over the last year in compliance levels, to the point where the monitor made a declaration that ABD is on the verge of catastrophic failure. These are very disturbing issues. I recognize that. And believe it or not, my entire career, I've been very much involved with police oversight, whether it was a city councilor, whether when I was on the city council, when I was chief public safety officer. I have a firm commitment and belief in it. But I'll also tell you this, I've advocated for the dismissal of the court-approved settlement agreement, because I think the actual intent and purpose of it has now been accomplished. And I think it's now the time to hold the mayor, the department itself, the rank and file, and put the onus on them to get the job done. And I think that we're going to have this continuation of resistance. And the monitor, many will argue, he has a financial incentive to continue with this. At one point, I believed that, but not any longer. I think with the statistics that he's been able to compile, and also the reports he has submitted, it's clear that we have continuing resistance within the Albuquerque Police Department to make the necessary changes to turn it around. And I don't believe we're going to get there under this mayor. And I sure hell do not think we're going to get there under Mayor Manny Gonzalez, because Mayor Gonzalez would be a disaster as far as I'm concerned when it comes to the DOJ consent decree. The problem is we're dealing with a federal court order, and APD has now avoided being held in contempt of court, not once, but twice, for failure to implement the program and taking on things that basically have interfered with the consent decree. And if the consent decree is as complicated as the APD and the union want us to believe, the time is to go back and try to renegotiate it and try to cut out some of the what they feel is burdensome. But if it's a return to the way policing was done before the consent decree, that is not going to happen, and that is not acceptable. Because I sense that there are many that would like to return to the days of old, days of yore, where they were able to use excessive force and deadly force at a whim. And that's really what got us in trouble. And I don't say any of that lightly. A lot of people ask why I feel so strongly about this. And it's something that I always avoided discussing until I left public life. I have actually seen firsthand, as a prosecutor, abuse of power by police officers. But I also saw the good side of how officers, at least when I was growing up, were able to treat people with dignity and respect. Something that my niece is aware of. My dad was mentally ill. He was a World War II veteran. And I recall very vividly when I was 12 years of age that he was going through a severe psychotic episode. We could not control him. Frankly, he was a violent man. And he never hurt me. He never hurt my mother, but he was a violent man. He was very self-destructive. And I recall having to call, we called the Albuquerque Police Department, and 2 police officers showed up. And the way they treated my father was with dignity and with respect. And they had the ability to settle him down. I recall one officer reaching over, putting his hand on his shoulder and saying, "Paul, you either settle down or we're going to take you in." They knew how to approach the problem. And they got the job. They weren't threatened by him, but they knew how to approach it. And even though he was a violent man. And sometimes I wonder what would have happened if the same scenario were to play out just 15 years ago, and I was a young man back then and saw that happen. I have serious doubts. But I also saw when I was this Albuquerque City Councilor, how the department had changed and was changing dramatically. The city was getting hit left and right with major lawsuits for excessive use of force and deadly force. And what has always been particularly interesting is that police departments, whether we like it or not, they're a paramilitary organization. And they are to be given as much backup as we possibly can, either as elected officials. But there must be an understanding that there has to be civilian oversight for it to be able to work. And I truly believe that. Policing should not be an island unto itself. So the question now comes into play, what do we do now? We've got a department that is still struggling with the consent decree. We have a situation involving murder rates that are out of control. I believe we hit 71, 72. Commander, where are we at now on murders? Do you have any idea, Weber? I think it's at 71, 72 now.
I think it's at 67 was the last number I saw.
67, okay. These officers, it's amazing what they're able to get accomplished with what they've got. And I tell you that because right now, the department is roughly at 980 police officers, sworn police officers. We're spending $277 million a year to finance this department. And we're supposed to be at 1,100 police officers. We're not there, and we're not going to get there. That was the promise that was made by the current mayor. He said that we'll have 1,200 officers by the time of end of my first term. We'll be lucky to even break 1,000. And when you take a look at those 1,000 police officers, actually, like I said, it's 850, 900. you got to ask, well, what are we getting in return for the investment? These people are so overworked. It's amazing. And what you've got is that those 850 or 900, let's say, have to be divided, the field services, to the various divisions. And the field services, they have roughly, the last numbers I saw, they had 640 that bid to go into the field. These are the boots on the ground. These are the officers that are handling all the hundreds of thousands of calls for service a year. All the others in the department are the command staff and the sergeants, the lieutenants. And what is truly disappointing is that this administration has dedicated roughly 60 law enforcement, sworn police officers to police the police, to do oversight. And I would submit that that is part of our problem. The consent decree, again, I firmly believe in it. It has to continue until they come into compliance. But until then, we're going to have to get a handle on what's happening, because what's going on now is not working. And I don't know if anybody really has the answer to it. But one thing that I have thrown out before and has been discussed, I think it's long overdue for consolidation of the Albuquerque Police Department and the Dinelli County Sheriff's Department. I think the time has come. We've talked about this for 30 some odd years, believe it or not, and it's never been accomplished. What you have is a police department and a sheriff's department that has a tremendous overlapping of resources. And when you look at the Albuquerque Police Department, its annual budget, like I said earlier, is $208 million. And for that, we get roughly a department of 1,500, with 1,100 of those positions supposed to be law enforcement. The others are support staff. The Dinelli County Sheriff's Department, on the other hand, is a budget of $57 million, and they have 400 sworn officers. What I believe is necessary is that, and it can be done because it's been done before in the past, there needs to be a consolidation of law enforcement and a creation of what I was referring to as a regional law enforcement authority. And there would be an abolishment of the sheriff's office. Class A counties of 1,000 or more would be able to consolidate their sheriff's departments with the largest municipal department. But with Albuquerque, it would be Dinelli County Sheriff's Office and the APD. When you look at the various departments, both departments, you're going to discover that their similarities are incredible as far as the breakdown. APD has 6 area commands, while BCSO has 3 area commands. APD has 5 major divisions: the Field Services Bureau, the Investigations Bureau, the Compliance Bureau, the Administrative Support Services, and the Administrative Services itself. BCO itself also has 3 major divisions, all very similar: Administrative Services, Criminal Investigations, BCSO. APD has 7 detective units. And again, there are specialized units, including the Violent Crimes Division, the Homicide Division. BCSO has 5 detective units. The bottom line is their goal is ultimately the same purpose: to serve and protect the community. But we are now dedicating so much to the CASA and so much to civil rights cases and law enforcement. We need to start really thinking about where do our priorities lie. And I believe consolidation is the answer. A lot of people say, well, it's never going to happen. Well, it has happened in New Mexico before when it comes to county services and the and city services. And the best example is the Water Authority. And those of you who've lived here some time know what I'm talking about. Many years ago, the legislature, under the leadership of Manny Aragon, he pushed through consolidation of the water department. That is where BCS, that is where the City Water Utility Authority, all of its assets, personnel were absorbed by the Water Utility Authority, and that goes for the same for the County Water Authority. And they created a governing board. And that's exactly the approach that I think we need to do in Albuquerque when it comes to law enforcement. You create a governing board, you consolidate both, and you form, I came up with an acronym, the Albuquerque County Police Authority. And what you would do is that you consolidate both these agencies. You would abolish the position of sheriff, or if they keep the position of sheriff, make him part of the governing board. And basically that governing board would consist of the mayor, the chief administrative officer, the chairman of the commission, the manager, county manager, and you would appoint a judge as the presiding official over the agency. In addition, you would hire what I believe would be an individual who would be akin to a police commissioner that would take control of the entire agency. What would be the advantage of that? Well, first of all, APD would no longer exist. And as a result, you would get rid of the consent decree. It's that simple. Consent decree only applies to the Albuquerque Police Department. If there is no Albuquerque Police Department, the consent decree goes away. Second of all, same policies, many of the same constitutional policing practices could be implemented by the governing authority. And that would also put the same restrictions on the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department. The goal, the ultimate goal, would be a consolidation of services with the approach where I believe you'd get more police officers on the street and on the ground. You'd be able to scale back a lot of relating to the consent decree, and you just go from there. But I think I've taken, what, 20 minutes, 30 minutes? So why don't I open it up to questions, and I'll respond to any questions you may have.
Mr. Dinelli, one question. What are our chances of going into receivership, and what would that look like?
I think the chances are getting better and better. Twice we've had the last two hearings. Let me back up. The two independent monitors reports, the last two, 12th and 13th, were the most scathing reports we've ever had. Because of the 12th monitors report, you had virtually all the stakeholders who are not parties to the lawsuit, the amici groups, asked that it be forced into receivership. The second go around, the last 13th report, when that came out, once again, you had an effort that what had happened is that the APD union had started a PR campaign to criticize the consent decree. Keep in mind, this organization would not exist if it wasn't for the consent decree. That is the Community Policing Councils. Once again, the court declined to do that. If they continue on the route they're going, I believe that within a year, you're going to see a court having to make that decision to throw us into receivership. And I don't say that lightly, because now you have created a independent force review board, hiring outside individuals to come in to review murder cases and decide whether or not policies had been followed. I don't give that much hope of working. But I think that that old saying, only time will tell. Well, the thing is that the biggest impediment at this point is the judge himself. The judge has told both the police, has told the Department of Justice and the Albuquerque city government, he has no intention of doing anything that he's not asked to do. And what he was telling them, and he said it point blank, what is your appetite? That's the words he used. He said, what is the appetite of the city of Albuquerque for me to hold APD in contempt of court? He then turned to the DOJ and asked them the same question. Does the DOJ have the appetite for me to be more aggressive and to appoint receiver? Both times, both parties said no. And the union took no position on that. The union took no position on it, even though they are a intervener in the case. And I have issues with the union. I don't mince any words about it. The monitor has said repeatedly, they are the number one, they are what he's referred to as the counter causa effect. The union is resisting the reforms, not overtly, but they point to incident after incident where the union is resisting any kind of discipline, they're resisting any kind of change, and they're going to fight it tooth and nail. And as far as I'm concerned, what's happening now is the clock is running out on another administration. But is it really? Because if Keller gets reelected, they're going to have the same old, and you're going to see another 4 years of this. If you have Manny, what you're going to see is a man that's going to basically take on the federal court system, which is, to me, is insane. Because he doesn't realize a federal judge, that's one authority that you don't take on. And the little posturing that he does is truly amazing. And I don't say this lightly, because I can point to specific cases that his office has handled because he has resisted constitutional policing. There was a 27-year-old mentally ill woman that was shot by three sheriff's officers. She came out with a knife. She was obviously in a psychotic, having a psychotic moment. She was stripped from the waist up. And they didn't bother to try to do any kind of de-escalation. They just shot her 27 times. There was another one involving an 88-year-old man who was pepperballed to death. They shot him, I forget how many times with pepper balls. He was hospitalized. He went under repeated surgeries, and he died. The Lucero case settled for $4.5 million, and the Duran case, the old man settled for 1.5 million. Mr. Duran was in severe dementia. He was 88 years old. He weighed not more than 110 pounds. He was going door to door because he was so distraught over the death of his wife of 50 years. The neighbors called out the SO, and the SO showed up. Guess what? In both cases, the sheriff's department did not have lapel cameras. Both cases. And so what we have is a existing sheriff who's resisted lapel cameras. He's resisted constitutional policing practices, and he's basically thumbed his nose. He turned around and actually awarded medals of commendation to his officers that took out the 27-year-old woman. So yes, I get concerned about it, but I also know this is my community. I believe one time we had the best law enforcement agency in the country, and it's not even a shell of its former self. To answer the question, I believe it's just a matter of time before we see this.
Next question, Mr. Dinelli, and you kind of alluded to this in your previous response, as being that the union is responsible for the continued resistance. The actual question is, who is responsible for the continuing resistance in APD?
who's responsible or who should be held responsible? I mean,
I would like the answer to both of those.
I think the union is the number one impediment to implementation of the police reforms. And I think ultimately it's the responsibility of the command staff, the chief, the deputy chiefs, and the mayor. And what we have now in the command staff is not getting it done. I believe that it was recommended that that the monitor and two hearings ago, he said that he recommended that APD bring in an outside player. In other words, appoint an outside chief. 4 years ago, I believe that there should have been a clean sweep. You should have hired a outside police chief, given him the authority to bring in his own management team of deputy chiefs, and remove the chief, the deputy chiefs, and you had a mayor that pretended that he was doing a national search, and he did no such thing. He brought in a retired APD commander who had become the chief of the Rio Rancho. We've got some serious problems.
Really?
And by the way, I do want to thank Sergeant Sims and Commander Weber for their service to this community. And I'm familiar with both your work, and I don't say this lightly. I want to do thank you for your service.
We have another
Willie, did you
question,
have a
Mr. Dinelli.
question?
Yeah, I did. I'm a little curious, Mr. Dinelli. I understand some degree, but when you talk about, you think we should, that we should allow the mayor and the police department and the union to kind of struggle through themselves without the consent decree when they aren't doing it with the consent decree.
That part I didn't check because I interrupted. It's like, you can raise your hand all day. That's not the instruction you were given.
My apologies, Cassandra.
Is that Dr. Orr that's talking?
That's me.
Okay. The point that I'm trying to make is that sooner or later, those in charge have to be placed back in charge. And they're the ones that have to be held responsible. It's called being held accountable. Right now, you have this convoluted court-approved settlement agreement. I like to describe it as the frame of the house is now in place. So is the roof. Now you've got, and that's in the form of all the reforms that have already been accomplished. There's like 27 major reforms that are in place. CPCs, the Police Oversight Commission, the Mental Health Advisory Council, the change in written policy. All the policies are written. That's the only area that we're in 100% compliance. What you have now is a department, the command staff, that are refusing to take on the reform process itself. And this is the part that's controversial of what I say. Sergeants and lieutenants, whether you want to admit it or not, this is management 101. Sergeants and lieutenants are management, yet they're allowed to be part of the union.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't feel that that's appropriate. I don't feel that's appropriate. I think that they should be made at-will employees. They are professionals, and they don't become sergeants and commanders if they don't have the background and know what they're doing. And you have to give them the tools and authority to act. But at this point in time, you've got a situation.
And they know it. That's why I'm fucking done.
Hello? Was I just cussed out? I think I've said enough.
Please continue, sir.
Okay. What you have is a situation, what I believe, that we have everything in place. Now let's give the authority to the people that are supposed to be in charge to get it done. Because as long as you got the DOJ overseeing it, and they're not willing to take action. The DOJ is not going to ask for contempt of court. They're not going to ask for anything more. They're happy with what's going on. And the reason why is they know if there's a receivership appointed, what'll happen is that they'll have to assume responsibility to manage this department. And they don't want to do that. What we need to do as a community is find somebody that is capable of doing that. And we, with the kind of money we're paying Medina and the, what is it, the new position they created, I just went blank on his name. They're paying Medina, I believe.
Superintendent Stanley.
The superintendent of APD. They're paying Medina, I think, $180,000, and they're paying the superintendent of police another $150,000. You mean to tell me we can't find a chief that has background in consent decrees to come out here and take over and be paid that kind of money? The reality of it is, Ginger made the recommendation. He said, we're at the point this mayor should have brought in. He didn't use those words. He said, I recommended an outsider be brought in. And until you give a person the authority, if the receiver is not appointed, if a receiver is ever appointed, what is going to happen? You're going to have to give them the kind of authority to them, what I've been talking about. The ability to terminate, the ability to remove the union, remove from the union the sergeants and the lieutenants, the ability to impose discipline. And it's called holding them accountable. And until you have a mayor that's willing to make the rough decisions, you're going to continue to have the problem. And I will not buy into this argument by law enforcement. We're tired of the politicians weeding us out and pointing and saying that we're the problem. Well, yeah, you are the problem when you did have situations involving what happened with George Floyd. And until we get a handle on it, until we recognize that we still have some serious problems in this community, we're not going to get any better.
So, Mr. Dinelli, what do you think the CPCs could do to help with some of the changes that you've proposed? I mean, we've had multiple meetings on
Do you feel you're being
the IMRs, but we've had multiple meetings on the IMRs and the non-compliance and the issues with the use of force and the training and
Let me ask
the
you,
sergeants and lieutenants being in the same union? And I mean, it just seems like those topics continually come up, but nothing ever seems to change.
Do you think the CPCs are being listened to by the mayor and the chief? I mean, there's your problem. If they're not listening and following through with what you're recommending, you've become a paper tiger. And, you know, I've had this complaint lodged before from former members that they've quit out of frustration. They feel that they're spinning their wheels. Even though you make presentations to the judge and you tell the judge what's going on, he's going to ignore you, because unless the city and the GOJ go along with it, they're not going to do anything. Judge isn't going to do anything. And I guess my background as a trial lawyer and as judge kind of sticks out, because I just believe you got to be very aggressive when you're dealing with this type of issue. You can't waste time with it, because otherwise what has happened will continue to happen. Again, the consent decree was realistic to say it could have been implemented in 4 years. Barry and Eden, they just played out the clock. And now you've got a mayor who's faced with a re-election, who's likely to get re-elected, but things aren't going to change, because he's really not committed to appointing a very assertive police chief. And the current police chief, I've been very vocal about it. I think he has a history of police officer involved shootings, one involving a 14-year-old that he was having a psychotic moment, shot him point blank in a church. And the second incident happened years later when that chief was a lieutenant, and he's the one that issued orders to use deadly force against the veteran that was pointing a gun to his head. So I am not at all. I don't believe you can have and I've said this in my blogs, by the way. I don't believe you can have a chief of police that is part of the problem, that contributed to the culture of aggression that was created. And but this is what we got.
So one question is, what are some actionable steps? What would be some actionable steps that you would recommend for the CPCs?
I understand there's a diversion of philosophies amongst all of you. I've gone to a few, and I do have good friends in some of these, and I'm advised that some are viewed as cheerleaders for the police department. Others are viewed as being nothing but gossip. Others who do not take their jobs seriously or responsible. Maybe it's the time to come where all the CPCs need to get together as one unit at least, and try to identify what you feel needs to be done immediately, and whether or not you would be in favor of getting rid of the CASA or whether you'd be in favor of having a receiver appointed. But the CPCs, I think there's a lot of hope. I think they're critical. I think it's important for commanders like Commander Weber and Sergeant and Lieutenant Saladin to show up and communicate with you, because that's getting back to community-based policing. But if the chief and the fifth and the fourth floor are not listening to you, I don't know how to say it, and I don't mean to offend you, but you're kind of wasting your time, aren't you? So I think you're at the point where I would try to call some sort of a summit of all the CPCs and come up with specific recommendations as to whether or not APD, what needs to be done with APD, what direction they need to go. And after the election, maybe call in the new mayor and schedule it for them. But I don't know. I've probably droned on way too long. And any other questions? I'm starting to lose my voice, believe it or not. I haven't been in front of groups of people.
I don't see any other questions. I don't see any other questions in the chat. Do we have any questions from any of the council members that they'd like to ask? Mr.
Roy
Dinelli?
Turpin.
How are you, Pete?
Good, Roy.
Good to see you again.
Good seeing you.
One question, as a former city councilor, and we've talked about this in some of our board meetings, do you think that we should go to our city councilors and try to drum up support from them to help strengthen our position?
Yes, very much so. The city council, I think, have been very derelict in their responsibility of police oversight. We've had at least 13 hearings on the independent mental on the monitor's reports. You never see a city council attending them. The last two hearings, no city councilor attended. They think they have they're the ones that need to also exert themselves into the process, and they don't want to because it's too tough. But I would think so. Who's your counselor in this area? You have two, don't you?
Yeah,
we've
Brooke
got-
Bassan,
Okay.
And Gibson.
and I think Debbie Gibson is the second one, or it's
Diane
either
Gibson's
her-
on her way out.
Yeah,
Brooke
Diane.
Bassan, Brooke Bassan has 2 years left. She seems to be very dedicated, and I'd encourage you to get a hold of her. But have any city councilors ever attended your CPC meeting?
Yes, they have.
Okay. And how do they react?
Yes, we've got.
How do they treat you? How do they react to you?
Well, I mean, we actually had the support of several city councilors when we created our ordinance. So we had many meetings with them and the city attorneys and CPOA Director Harness and many of the Council of Chairs. We put wording together for an ordinance. So, I mean, we're thankful for their support with that. But you bring up a lot of good points, and they're points that we have talked about, as Roy mentioned, in some of our board meetings, as far as holding APD accountable and transparency, and looking at the structure of APD as far as how deputy chiefs are selected and promoted, and basically how leadership is selected and trained. And so those are issues that are a concern for us. And we have voiced that in our annual report. Each CPC is responsible per the CASA to submit an annual report to the monitors, independent monitor team, and we have done that. And yeah, we do get frustrated with the lack of response from multiple entities.
Well,
and so you've put a challenge to us that that we're well aware of, and it should just make us more determined to, we actually have a meeting scheduled for Monday with the mayor and APD leadership, and that includes the Council of Chairs.
Tell the mayor hello for me.
Oh, okay. I will.
Anything else?
Okay.
Well, I want to thank you all for having me. I enjoyed it. Feel free to, and Dina, you better be good.
Well, thank you so much for accepting our invitation to speak. We appreciate it very much.
And
yes, thank you very much.
I'll come back and talk to you whenever you want. And if any of you want to get a hold of me, let me give you my email address. It's pdinelli@aol.com. Dinelli, small p, and then Dinelli, AOL. And then the blog is www.petedinelli.com. I try to write an article a day during the week. And when I first started the blog 4 years ago, I had, for the first 4 months, I had 20,000 views and shares of the articles. Last year, for the entire year, I had an all-time high of 107,000 views and shares of my articles. So I must be doing something right. The most common comment I get is, I don't agree with everything you say, but at least you're raising the issues. So thank you very much for having me. And again, give me a call anytime, and I'll come back and talk to you all if you want to talk about anything. Okay.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for spending time with us, speaking with us tonight, Mr. Dinelli. It was very enlightening, and you've lit a match underneath us for sure.
Okay.
We need to be probably a little bit more assertive, especially with city council.
You're going to have to be. Believe me, it's being a city councilor is not easy. I did it for 4 years and realized it really is a thankless job, but the people that become city councilors, I think, are highly dedicated individuals. Take care of yourself.
Yes.
I'm going to sign off now. Okay.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. Well, stay
Thanks,
safe.
Monty.
Be well.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, I think what we'll do is just go to old business, new business very quickly, and then ask for APD's presentation. So I just had a few things for old business. We had talked about having a CPC town hall, and we had planned it for September, but at the Council of Chairs meeting, we decided that it would probably be a better idea to hold off on having that until we can do an in-person town hall. So we will be planning an internal or an in-person town hall meeting at some point. We're just not sure of the date, so I'll keep you up to date on that. Also, we have a monthly meeting calendar that's on the CPC website. So if you are interested in joining other CPC meetings, those Zoom invitations are on there. It's the city's website, just do a search for CPC. Also, I mentioned earlier about APD having newsletters for each of the area commands. And if you are not on the email list for those and you would like to be, you can email Commander Weber at gweber, WEBER, at cabq.gov, or Francesca Perdue, who is the crime prevention specialist for the Northeast area. And her email is FPERDUE. And it's a good newsletter. It's a quarterly newsletter, and it just gives us information and stats about what's going on with the area command in the Northeast. So the new business is we have a new recommendation that is being worked on for submission of recommendations and how the city will handle recommendations that are submitted by the CPCs. And we're looking at creating or asking APD to create an SOP, a standard operating procedure for those. And I think it's Commander Sanchez and some of the folks from the Foothills CPC that are working on that recommendation. And so we're getting wording together, and that should be submitted shortly. Also, I mentioned the CPC, the chairs will be meeting with the mayor and APD leadership on this coming Monday to talk about the annual reports and address some of the concerns that we have, some of the issues, some of our challenges, what we think is going well. That's my intention anyway. I'm not sure what the other chairs are going to be talking about. That's my idea. So I'll report on that at our next meeting in August. That's all for old and new business. So I would like to turn it over to Sergeant Sims and Commander Weber to do the statistics and the reports on crime for the Northeast.
All right, thank you very much. These crime stats are for June 1st through June 30th. For property crimes, larceny, that includes shoplifting, fraud, forgery, we had 148, auto burglary 50, vandalism 56, auto theft 72, recovered stolen vehicles 13, commercial burglaries 21, residential burglaries 16, and disturbances 125 for offenses involving people. Family offenses 300, fight in progress 16, aggravated assault and battery 76, robbery all types 36, criminal sexual penetration 8, and homicide 2. For the month, total calls for service was 8,000 131. Moving on to the use of force statistical data. For the Northeast, last month we had 3 level 1s, 4 level 2s, and 3 level 3s for a total of 10. Force per 1,000 calls, Northeast was at 1.2. In terms of the breakdown for the uses of force for the whole month of June, disturbances and family disputes were both 12. Suspicious persons or vehicles, 9. Suicide, 7. Continuation of earlier force event, 6. Wanted person, 4. Fight in progress, 3. Auto burglary, shots fired, drunk driver, stolen vehicle found, behavioral health, and aggravated assault all consisted of 2. Stabbing, bait vehicle theft, on-site disturbance, commercial burglary, auto theft, shooting, welfare check, armed robbery, commercial business, vandalism, and SWAT all had 1. And that is all for the statistical data. If you have any questions, I would stand for that.
I don't have any questions. Does the council, does Willie, did you have a question? Is that your hand up?
You're muted,
Go
Willie.
ahead, Willie.
There you go. I was trying to get to unmute. We were talking, some members of the council emailing back and forth, and we're wondering, and Roy, you may have to help me with the abbreviations, but the aren't there some statistics called the UCR, NIBRC statistics, which have to come out monthly? And could you use those statistics instead, which are more reliable, more consistent for this report? Did I come close to the right terminology, Roy? Right.
Yes, you did. It's actually UCR is an old term. NIBRS, National Incident Based Reporting System, is newer. But back when I worked at APD, they were produced by the records division on a regular basis, and at that time that data was disseminated out to the area commanders, and they had it on a monthly basis. And I was in charge of crime analysis at that time, so that's how I know about the availability of those statistics. And unless there's been a major cut back in personnel and records, I would imagine that those statistics are still readily available. I may be wrong though, because I've been gone for a while.
So you want to know, or you would like to see those official statistics on a monthly basis? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, if it's possible, if you could report NIBRS data. I know you're working off of CADS data, and it obviously CADS data captures criminal activity, but NIBRS might distill that information down a little bit more.
So, and Commander Weber, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sorry. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the official data is only compiled twice a year in terms of those official numbers. It's not disseminated on a monthly basis. Is that correct, Commander?
Yes, the NIBRS data, so we don't use UCR anymore. That's an old term, if you will. The NIBRS data is reported twice a year and closed out twice a year and then given to the FBI. We do have monthly stats that are vetted by records that are posted to the website. It's not up, you're not going to see something for June yet. I believe it's through April or May at this point. So they do update the website now. So I do encourage you to go out. The H Area Command has its own website. So we can give you we give you what we can give you, I guess, every month. And we've talked many times. It's not perfect. I know people would like to see, I guess what they would call the vetted, hey, what's the official number? I don't have, if I had that for you, I'd give it to you. I don't, there's no secrets. I don't, the murders are up. Everybody knows that. The auto thefts are up. Most of our property crime, other than auto theft, is down. But in terms of official data, yeah, it's posted on the website. I think it's through April or May, and that has been vetted by records, but they only report the official numbers to the FBI twice a year.
I know that they report, they only report. It used to be that they only reported to the FBI at the end of the year, but at that time they were compiling monthly statistics. And we were, kind of talking amongst ourselves, as Willie said, and should this be a request that maybe we put through 2 records and get it directly from them? Your plate's full. We're not trying to add work to your plate, so to speak. And if we need to ask records to see if they could provide that, I'd be happy to do that.
Certainly.
Commander, were you saying that the websites have actually been vetted by records, and that data, even though it may be a month in arrears, that's the actual data that we're looking for, that it's already out there on the area command websites?
Yes, the data is provided. The individuals who manage the website get that data from records. Now, there will be, I can almost promise you, there will probably be some slight changes when they do their final closeout to the FBI, because they always, what happens is there'll be a police report that's stuck in a cloud somewhere. All the officers submit their reports through an online system, and they do find reports where it's like, hey, this report never made it, or this report is a duplicate. And so they always have to adjust it just slightly. So when they do that final closeout, that's where they really say, okay, now we think we've found everything. But yes, the monthly, they are sent by records. And so they are, I guess I would say 95 to 100% accurate.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So Commander, can you tell us anything about the bid coming up?
I can. The lieutenants are bidding tomorrow. The lieutenants always bid first. Then the sergeants will bid in a week. And I think the officers bid in 2 weeks. There are 370 officers on the bid list. Approximately they will bid 60 sergeants, because there are 60 teams throughout the city. They will bid 18 lieutenants. Is that the information you're looking for, or is there something different I can answer on that?
Well, I was just wondering, like, what's going on, when it's starting, like you said, then when it's done, and when we can expect new officers, or do you have an idea of, are we going to be keeping our current officers, our current sergeants, lieutenants? Kind of, do you have a feel for what the area command's going to look like?
We will have, we did do some fairly significant changes to the scheduling. Right now the department operates on all 4 10-hour shifts. We will be switching back to our night watch officers will continue to work 10-hour shifts. The day and swing officers are going to go to 8-hour shifts. So they're going to redistribute the manning a little bit. We're going to have a total of 10 teams in the Northeast. And I don't have the exact numbers on what we're going to get in terms of the bid. It will take effect August 28th. And so that's when you can expect to have new officers and contacts, that sort of thing. In terms of, how many are you going to get that are new versus those that stay, that's always hard for me to predict, because it's a seniority system. So you can have people who say that they want to go back, but if a particular shift is not open for them, then they won't. if they won't be able to come back. So, we'll just kind of see how that plays out here in the next couple of weeks. It's always an interesting time of the year.
Yeah. Okay. And any word on you?
Well, I appreciate the question. So I did,
as far as
everybody's wanting to know, I did meet with the mayor and the CAO actually earlier today. Mayor does intend to promote me, and the chief does intend to keep me in the Northeast. So when exactly that process will occur, I'm not sure. They'll put that out.
Oh, okay. I saw your email. You said you were meeting with them, but I wasn't sure. Okay, so now I get it. When that was what you were meeting with them about, was your official promotion to commander. Okay. Okay, well, great. Okay, thank you for the update.
Thank you.
Kelly, is there anything from recommendations, the new process, the meeting that you wanted to share with everyone?
I wouldn't say that we have a new process quite yet. One thing that we did establish, which I think was important, was that all recommendations will go to the same person, which is Janet Carrillo from now on. And she will figure out who to disseminate them to inside the system. We were doing things which I thought would possibly work with making new policy recommendations and that sort of stuff. But we decided that the main thing would just be to send them to one person. And we will be getting a smart sheet report every month to disseminate to the CPC chairs as to the status of the current recommendations, and also a report on recommendations when they are decided in every CPC meeting. So.
Yeah, if I could add to that real quick, Vicki, I don't know if the department has sent you these or if they're only sending them to me. So I received an update from our compliance division. So I have about 8 recommendations that look like they were submitted in 2019 that the chief has put a response on, and then I have one from 2021, and our intent is to present those to you each meeting. In other words, as you make recommendations and the chief responds to them through this tracking system, that we would present those to you. So one that I can update you on is in April, I want to say in April, you all had made a recommendation that somebody from within APD's leadership, at least at the deputy chief level or the chief administrative officer, attend all CPC meetings every month, and that you would like, in addition to SOP 311, as leadership representation at community events is not specified. And you provided your reasons, which I remember talking about. And so the chief's response was that he believes that APD's leadership should demonstrate their commitment to the community. He believes they do so on a daily basis through numerous engagements to include the councils. He thinks it would be difficult to promise a deputy chief level position at every single CPC. So he said he's not wanting to add that to policy, but he does want to make it part of the executive staff expectations that he has, that each deputy chief attend at least one per area command per year. I think we have, gosh, I lose count. They make so many changes. I think we have 7 deputy chiefs now. So I think if he holds true to that, you would have at least 7 plus the chief. You would have at least 8 a year that they would attend according to his response. So that's the update on the latest one that I have. On the other 8, you probably don't want me to go through them one by one, but I can send them to you if you don't have them, or we can present them at a future meeting if you'd like.
Okay, yeah, a future meeting. I think those were probably the ones that came from the community, not necessarily from the council, and those were born out of questions that we asked at each of the community council meetings when we were having in-person meetings. And so those were concerns and questions that the community had, and we just kind of made them into recommendations so that we could get a response, and also to let APD leadership know what the community was thinking, what types of questions the community, wanted to ask what their concerns were. And yeah, I think that was probably in 2019 because I think I actually sent them to Chief Geyer. So it was a while ago. So.
Yeah, so I would say moving forward, if you, as a council, if you move on a recommendation and you discuss it and you have an official recommendation, which I think would really serve the purpose of the council. I know that you all discussed that earlier with Mr. Dinelli, and I think I would find it actually helpful if you send through an official recommendation, then I think that the chief will respond to it. And I think we have a way to track that so that there is some back and forth rather than, the last thing I would want is for you not to feel like you're at least being heard as a council.
Right. Yeah, and I think, so we would get the response in writing, right, from whoever the subject matter expert would be, depending on who Janet doles those out to as far as the subject of the recommendation, right?
Yes, that's
correct. We would get a response in writing from someone.
Yes, and I have the responses I have are in writing. I just don't know if they've been distributed to you. So let me follow up with Janet tomorrow and find out kind of what their plan is. And then if I can send them to you, I mean, I don't know why I wouldn't be able to. It should be public record. So I'll send it to you.
Okay, we had another question. It says, regarding the Northeast Area Command, what is the expected number of total officers P1/Cs and P2/Cs that will be assigned after the bid? Any thoughts on that, Commander?
Sure. Right now, I've been allocated 72 patrol level officers. So that doesn't include sergeants or lieutenants. It does not include Sergeant Sims' team. So just for the bid, I've been allocated 72. I can't give you a breakdown of how many of those will be first class versus second class because I haven't been given that information. Most of them, probably 85%, I would say, will be P1C officers, but I don't know the exact breakdown.
Okay, and what has the PRT team been up to? Where are they working now?
I'll pass that on to Dane, but I'll tell you that I received an email from another area commander suggesting that they be team of the month for the number of arrests and impact that they've been having in the University of Manal area. But I'll let Sergeant Sims answer that.
Well, yeah, we've been primarily focusing our efforts University of Manal area to also include the San Mateo Cutler corridor, as we refer to it. But every week it seems like there's new issues that arise throughout the area command that we try and focus on. Most recently over by Carlisle and Montgomery, there's a shopping center that's having trouble with people camping over there. But primarily, again, the University of Manal area is where we have been focusing primarily a lot of our efforts, and as well as the bike path along the North Diversion Channel. That is an awesome bike trail that we're trying to keep safe for everybody so everybody can enjoy to the fullest extent.
As someone, Sergeant, someone who rides that route a lot, you've done a much better job than it was 2 years ago. It feels much safer than it did.
Thank you. If you have any complaints or anything, please let me know. Bring them to my attention so we can better focus our efforts and deploy resources to make it better.
Yeah, it still is mostly the underpass in Montgomery on I-25 is where you see trouble. That's usually where you'll find it. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, Lieutenant Saladin and Sergeant Silva, any comments or input from the two of you?
I'll start right now. We have class of 49 APD cadets still in, set to graduate later this year. And Sergeant Silva and Sergeant Hoisington are already seating our next two classes, one for CNM and one for APD. I'll let him get into those numbers though.
Right now, what we're looking for is police service aides. We were trying to fill in the last bit for the August class. We'd like to have 30. I think we will end up over 20, but we would love to try to hit 30. So if anybody knows somebody who's interested in signing up as a PSA, let me know. Bringing applicants for the Lateral Academy. It's going to be starting in November. And again, we're just barely getting out of our last classes. So we only have 13 right now that are in the backgrounds process at some point. And then we got about 30 already in backgrounds process for the 125 in December, which we want to have 70 seated for. One other thing, this was brought up earlier in the CPC. Mr. Dinelli mentioned about merging with BCSO, and that would, I guess, changing our name would allow us to get out of the consent decree. I don't think that that's accurate. I think that it's written in the consent decree that even if we merge with another department or they merge with us, it would still be under consent decree.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering about that too. It just seems like even if you change the name, it doesn't seem like it would just go away. So
right.
The
Yeah,
consent
no.
decree is against the city. It's not, I'm not a lawyer, but I believe that was a completely inaccurate statement. The consent decree is against the city of Albuquerque. You can call us whatever you want. You can call us the Duke City Public Safety Department, or the consent decree is not going away.
yeah, I would agree there. Not until we get into compliance, and we've been there for 2 years. I mean, that's been my experience or my knowledge these last 3 or 4 years that I've been involved in going to the hearings. I mean, I think that's the only way is to get into compliance, stay there for 2 years, and then we'd be done. So, and I know Elizabeth is on. She may not be legally capable to voice some opinion there, but I think I would agree with Commander that I don't think it would just go away. So, Kenneth, did you have something?
Yeah, I have a question for Sergeant Silva. Now that the COVID restrictions are relaxing and being able to do recruitment perhaps in face-to-face, do you anticipate seeing more interest in numbers of applicants to the APD Police Department as maybe you're able to go out and to various locations and recruit members?
Yes, I do. But I think one thing that we learned that
I think you might have cut out.
Oh yeah, we kind of lost you, Sergeant Silva.
hello, can you hear me?
Now we
Yeah,
can.
you kind of
Okay,
cut
so-
out there, so we didn't hear exactly what you were saying.
So what we learned is virtual is really a powerful source of recruitment. So we're not going to abandon that whatsoever. However, there are still a substantial number of people that would prefer to be recruited face to face. So we are doing a lot of in-person events, and if you all know of something, we're happy to attend or try to get somebody out there and do some recruitment.
And that will be in-state or in the city versus out of the city. I think maybe that was mentioned in an earlier CPC meeting. Is that true? Or is it just obviously more focused in Albuquerque, but is there out of city events and recruitment?
Yeah, there's both. I think the national trend is you're seeing departments more and more around the country look for policing recruits outside of their cities. Just to expand that recruiting pool, it's become increasingly difficult to recruit police officers, in large part due to some of the negativity that surrounds policing, but that's kind of the trend.
Thank you.
Well, I will say that I'd like you on Facebook, and so I follow you on, APD on Facebook, and I'm really liking the recruiting videos that you're putting out as far as the type of individuals that we're looking for to come to the city and be on the police force. So I can see some major changes in how that recruiting is happening. So I think the ads are really good. The videos are good.
Thank you. You know, we focused heavily, again, this is the new, you know, going, everybody's cord cutting. So online, Facebook, all that is the new powerful method of getting your ads out.
Yeah. Okay, anything else from APD? Francesca, did you have anything to mention as far as what's going on with crime prevention? Are you back doing in-house security checks, or is that online? Or can you tell us a little bit about what you've been working on, please?
So I'm officially back, and it's awesome because my job is literally to be out in the community. So everything has been lifted, and I am doing CPTEDs, which is Crime Prevention to Environmental Design Security Surveys. So you all can contact me. It's a free service through the city. We come out and take a look at your property and give you recommendations on how you can make it safer. So I definitely recommend taking advantage of that. If you're a part of a neighborhood association and you're doing meetings again, we want to be invited to those as well. So if you're interested, you can contact me for that as well.
Okay, and neighborhood night out is coming again in August, right? We'll be planning for that. So if anybody's involved in their neighborhood association, neighbor night out.
Yes, that's a national night out. It is set right now for Tuesday, August 3rd. So if you have an event that is planned, please, you wouldn't register through me. I've had a few emails come through asking if they register with me. You can actually go on to the city website, and that's where you can register your event. If you just go to City of Albuquerque, and I believe it's / National Night Out, that is where you can register your event.
Okay, National Night Out, okay. All right. I think that's everything. Did anyone on the council have questions or comments or anything? We've got about 8 minutes left.
I'd like to make a statement. It's not a question.
Okay.
Just
Sure. Go ahead.
I want to commend the Northeast Heights Commander Weber and everyone that works for you, considering that you had over 8,000 calls for service in your last reporting period, and comparing that to the number of personnel that you have, that's a pretty heavy workload. I don't know how you all compare across the city to the other area commands, but I appreciate what you all are doing, and I wanted to say that publicly.
Thank you, Roy. I will pass that on actually to all of the supervisors to discuss at briefing. I think it's important that the officers hear that. And yes, the 8,000 calls for service for the 70 or 80 people that I have is, you can do the math. It's and they make arrests on top of it. They do proactive work on top of it. It's they get run ragged, and I don't think of enough. So thank you for saying that.
You bet.
Okay, well, and thank you for both being here. I know Commander Weber and Sergeant Sims, you're here every meeting, willing to answer our questions and participate in our meetings and answer community questions. And we appreciate you being here. Also, Lieutenant Saladin and Sergeant Silva, we appreciate your time. We know Zoom meetings will soon be done, and we're very happy. I'm really anxious to meet everyone in person. It's been crazy. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your service. Be safe.
Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good night, everybody. Take care.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.